Welcome back to Easy Health and Fitness. You know, recently a letter I wrote to Mishpacha magazine was published in the letters section, and people expressed their appreciation, and I appreciate your appreciation. It's interesting that I signed the letter, my name, and with below my name I wrote TorahHealth.org, and the editors left that line out. They changed it actually to Baltimore, Maryland. And I think I know why they did so, and I think it's because I myself did not flesh out my point to where I should have. See, the letter I wrote has nothing to do with health and fitness. The letter I wrote was about the situation at college campuses, specifically we're picking on Harvard, the most famous of the colleges that's had their president resign. And my focus on my letter was that actually what has happened at Harvard is good for us, because the Torah says when Noach gives a bracha to his children, he says that Yefes should dwell in the tent of shame. He said God should expand Yefes, God should increase Yefes, and he should dwell in the tent of shame. So universities, Harvard and all the other universities, their intellectual tradition traces directly back to Aristotle. Aristotle is the epitome of Yavan. Yavan is the most famous descendant of Yefes. Greece, Hellenism is from Yefes. For the last 100 years, Jewish people, especially in the United States, have been enamored by these universities, which are really the tents of Yefes. And while they are wonderful places to learn knowledge, for example, how to be a doctor, how to become a doctor, you go to Harvard, you'll become an excellent doctor. But that's different from wisdom. They have knowledge, but not wisdom. Wisdom is in our tent, in the tents of shame. And we shouldn't get confused between the two. And if we don't find wisdom at Harvard, it shouldn't surprise us, because we're never meant to find wisdom there. They're meant to come to us for wisdom. That's where I left my letter. And the part that I left out and that I could have added is the following. We want both. We really want knowledge and wisdom and knowledge. Anything about how the body works, you know, how to take care of the body, like I said, medicine, for example, that's knowledge. And how the soul works, what the soul needs, that's wisdom. We want both, and we want them in balance and harmony. And they should be able to go together, as long as the priorities are straight. This is body and soul. This is why we call the book Body and Soul, that I keep talking about. So let's apply that to something practical for today. If you read the book, you'll see we never advocate going on a diet. We don't think dieting is the way to go to achieve any goals. You might achieve a short-term goal dieting, but it's unlikely to achieve your long-term goals of dieting. Dieting implies something temporary, and we're teaching something permanent, slow, tiny steps towards real, meaningful change. And that's how you'll achieve your goals. Now let's talk, for example, about food and eating. And I would like to suggest the way to find the balance between body and soul, between Harvard and the yeshiva. And that is, let the soul guide, let the wisdom be the guide. And then the knowledge will add to that, as opposed to the opposite. I don't want to follow the knowledge and then maybe try to complement that with some wisdom. I want to follow the wisdom of the Torah And we'll complement that as needed in the right context with the knowledge from Harvard. So what does wisdom say about eating? What kind of eating is good for the soul? What we find is if you eat in a way that's good for the soul, guess what? It's also good for the body. Now, one of the great teachers of this is Rav Avram ben David, known as the Ravad. He lived in 1125 to 1198. A very, very early authority, medieval authority, Rishon. Listen to the Ravad, what he says about holy eating. And I think you'll hear how this completely is the right way for healthy eating as well. I'll quote, "In my opinion, the great fence and the ideal protection and the good path of controlling the Yetzer Hara, that is the evil inclination, is depriving the body of some of its pleasures and enjoyment in food and drink." Uh-oh, you don't like where this is going, right? The Rav is going to tell you to deprive yourself of some enjoyment? Don't worry. He's not going to be so extreme. Here's what he says, what he means by limit. To limit one's enjoyment to pleasant aromas and bathing in hot water in order to promote digestion. The limited food that he eats should be properly prepared to be tasty to him so that his animal soul will be satisfied in their small amounts. He should always prepare a bit less than his needs and the fulfillment of his desires. You hear what he's saying? It's a beautiful thought. He's saying, limit the quantity of food, but make sure it's super tasty. He doesn't want you to limit the taste, the enjoyment of it, but just limit the quantity. I'll continue because he has more to say. There are two great takanas in this area. One, that his eating should not harm him, and two, that it should conquer the Yetzer Hara and his bodily desire. You see this? This is exactly the theme of the entire Body and Soul program that we've been teaching last few months in this series. That the purpose of food, that God gave us a world where we eat food every day, is to teach us self-control. So the Ravad is giving us a method of using food to exercise that self-control muscle, which is limit the quantity, but not the taste. The taste should be 100%. He goes on to say, it goes without saying that a person should protect himself from foods that he knows to be harmful. Well, like Ravad is saying, it's obvious. Don't eat harmful foods. Foods that you know are not going to be good for you, don't eat them. For one who eats harmful foods or who has non-harmful and who has alternatives, meaning you have other food available and you choose to eat the harmful food. You have a healthy soda and you have a unhealthy soda, a healthy seltzer and an unhealthy soda, and you choose to drink the unhealthy soda. That person is negligent with his body and negligent with his life, for he's following his desires and not concerned about destroying his body. That's not good. This is the way of the Yetzer Hara, and it's clever guidance to turn him from the path of life to the path of death. That's the end of my quote from the Ravad. This is, by the way, I'm in the chapter in our book. If you want to look, if you have the book, you want to receive this yourself. Chapter 14 called Holy Eating. So let's understand what the Ravad is trying to tell us. The Ravad is saying obviously we need food. Obviously we desire food. It's not it shouldn't be a struggle that causes us to suffer. It's an opportunity to exercise the muscle of self-control. And his advice on how to do that is to figure out how much food you need, reduce it just a little bit, so it's not quite as much as you think you need, and then make it super tasty. So the extra taste, the tastiness will make up for the slightly reduced quantity, and then you're teaching yourself this amazing lesson of self-control. There's extreme people out there, right? There's some people who starve themselves and they suffer, And there's some people who overeat, and they overindulge and they suffer. And the Ravad is really teaching us a very holy and healthy middle path. And remember, if you're only eating for health and not enjoyment, that's also not the Jewish way. And I'd like to make that point, or emphasize that point, with a wonderful quote from Rav Victor Miller. When you eat breakfast, says Rav Miller, learn to enjoy it to the hilt. Fully, live deeply, richly on your piece of bread and salt and water. When the tzaddik eats, he enjoys it. He really is happy with his food. That glass of water is more delicious to him than the most expensive champagne. Tzaddikim are not the only people who look forward to the pleasure of Olam Haba, but have pleasure in this world too. You think you're such a tzaddik because you're not tasting your food, you're eating for health? No, says the Rav. If you're a real tzaddik, that whatever he used the example of bread, but anything you're eating, slow it down and taste it, enjoy it, and you know that when you taste and enjoy it, you're not only being holier, but it's better for your body too. The food digests better. You tend to much less likely to be overeating when you're slowing down. This is the way. I call this the Ravad's discipline. Learn to make your food super tasty and lower the quantity and develop that self-control muscle. And as always, may you be gesund.